balance sheet. Now, let's talk about finance. Another area, if we must have affordable housing, the way forward is that there's hardly any development that can break even if your interest is outside the single-digit rate. You cannot go and borrow money at 70 to 22% and say you want to produce affordable houses. It's just not possible. We must create an enabling environment for income, for access to finance, for real estate, particularly for the low-income group, to be at a single-digit rate. This is extremely, very, very important, and we must encourage that. I don't want to bore you by doing an analysis of a two-bedroom house that you cost at, let's say you're even developing a house at 5 million naira. Okay, if the market price of the house is about 650,000 naira per rent in a year, interest rate at 9% alone is 450,000. And if you have to do repayment over 25 years, that gives you another 250,000 naira in a year. So really, you are saying that any rent that is above 650,000 naira, there is nobody who is on income of less than 58,000 naira a month that can afford that. So it stands to reason that the higher the interest you are paying on your facility or on your house, the more unaffordable the house will be. So we need interest on our loan for houses to be single digits than multiple digits. Then, of course, another way forward for affordable housing is sell to build. I call it sell to build because you will first of all secure your off-takers before you even move to sites to start constructing. This is what most financiers are now looking at. And we have found that they are really, really working for the community, for Nigerians, because if you sell before you build, that means you are building to a target market. That is very crucial. Then secondly, there is no waiting time after completing your construction. You don't have to expose yourself and start looking for buyers, that are not there. Okay. Then when you're able to do this, then of course the buyers themselves, they are also part and parcel of the financing of your project, which means it will save the developer a lot of money from going back to the market to actually go and source for loan. So I believe that the concept of sell to build is extremely very important, and we must all cling to this, because what we're seeing is that off-takers are secured prior to construction, and then this one is also going to help us. Well, I don't know how much time I still have. If I still have more time, then of course I will deal with other areas where we need to talk about the intervention of the local content in housing. Now we have the Nigerian content in the oil industry. We can extend what they're doing there to the housing sector. If the progress they have made under the Nigerian content in the oil industry is extended to construction industry, then it will boost local production of housing materials, and we know that a lot of research can go in, and we'll be encouraged to use locally sourced materials for housing development in Nigeria. I believe that if all these factors are put into use, the affordable, it's a very good way to enhance affordability, and it's a way forward in producing affordable houses in Nigeria. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. If I still have more time, kindly let me know so that I know what to put in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, our own dear Surveyor Bello. We are very grateful for your presentation. It has afforded us a very new dimension in the way forward towards mass housing provision. Just a little clarification. You adopted the definition of affordability to be a housing accommodation that is less than or about 30% of one's income. You are talking about rental accommodation or ownership, house ownership, accommodation. Is it in terms of house rental?
Yeah,
That
definition
30.
actually, that definition actually is borrowed, is the definition of the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. And it says that if your mortgage payment exceeds 30% of your income, yes, so it's relating it to your mortgage repayment.
Mortgage.
Yes. And also, I also spoke about the residual approach to or definition of affordable housing, which says that if you don't spend more than 30%, if you can run your other services other than housing efficiently after satisfying your housing needs, that is not more than 30% of your interest of your income, then of course you are good to go. But if it is more, then there's going to be problem in other areas.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your very able treatment of this very important topic. And we believe that you make the print copy available to the institution in due course.
Okay.
Thank you. So let us now also welcome others, panel members who also have to contribute.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, the moderator. We want to thank the two presenters, Senator Benga Shafa and our own Estate Surveyor and Valuer, Rebello. While the last presenter was having his presentation, we have in our midst the MD of the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company, Mr. Kehinde. In fact, it would be very apt for him to just follow with his own presentation based on what our Estate Surveyor and Valuer just presented. So okay. The moderator, please.
Thank you, my VP, first VP. Ogun Demo Kehinde, you're a fellow of Nigeria Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, and currently the managing director of the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company. You have specialty in secondary mortgage and diversified banking services, as well as public accounting. You are very much welcome to this symposium in commemoration of our 60th independence anniversary. Can you please talk to us on your paper or discussion on Nigerian mortgage sector and the challenges of housing delivery in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, moderator. Let me start by thanking the leadership of the Nigerian Institute of Estate Surveyors and Valuers for the invitation to speak at this symposium. Our relationship with the institution dates back to our inception. Since we were established as a company, we have been dealing with the NIESV. So you have been our brother and our colleague in arms. In fact, about a month ago, we signed an MOU with the president of the institution in areas on which the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance will collaborate with NIESV. it's just very apt that I'm following after ESV Oluwadare Bello, because most of the things that I will be saying this morning, he has touched on them. But with your permission, moderator, I will just share a few slides. So I will share my screen now.
You're welcome.
Can the host allow me to share my screen? Okay.
Okay.
So I'll just share my screen, and then, as I said, the earlier speaker had said a lot of things that I would have loved to say, but it's still apt that I go through them. Just to look at the challenges that we have in the industry, especially with housing delivery. One of the biggest challenges we had before the creation of NMRC was that we had the asset and liability mismatch. So most of the banks in Nigeria had short-term deposits, and so they could not possibly give out mortgages for longer term. So if your deposit was for 3 months or for 1 year maximum, the highest you could give out mortgages was for about 5 years, which made affordability a major challenge. Since we came on board, we have increased the tenor of mortgages to up to 15 and 20 years. So that problem has been solved, the problem of asset liability mismatch. And so I've not included it in some of the challenges that I'm putting up here. But if you look at the very first one, which ESV Bello spoke very eloquently about, the major challenge is the high cost of construction. So we'll go through, I have 4 that I've listed here. There are more than that I said, some of them are being solved, some of them have been solved. Is the high cost of construction. And I just want us to, if I go to this slide, just doing a comparison of cost of construction across various countries in Africa. So the Center for African Housing Finance in South Africa, a few years ago, working with various partners in Africa, went around 15 countries to carry out an analysis of the housing sector, of the cost of building houses. So if you look here, you see that we don't have to compare ourselves to Kenya. So what they did was to get a prototype, a standard house. This is the dimension. These are the things that are required. And they went out countries. If you look at Nairobi in Kenya, that type of prototype will cost $63,000 to build. The same house in Senegal would cost about $52,000 to build, while in Nigeria it cost $43,000 to build that same house. They did bill of quantity and a lot of things. So you will see, but if you go to a country like Tanzania, the same house will cost $26,750. In South Africa, which is even a developed country, you see that it will cost just $28,000, at least $14,000 lower than Nigeria. So that means the cost of construction of housing in Nigeria is something that has to be tackled if we're talking about affordability. I know when we say affordability every time, there are 3 things that we need to consider in terms of affordability. The cost of the houses itself, the cost of acquiring the house, so it is one thing they say this house costs 10 million. But if I want to buy it, I either use cash, which is my cash, there's a cost attached to that cash that I'm giving out, the opportunity cost, because I could have as well taken out a mortgage and invest my cash in other assets that will be generating income. So you have to look at that cost, and then you have to now look at disposable income, which Mr. Bello also talked about, which is 30% of the person's income. So it is those 3 combinations that will determine affordability. So if I go back to this slide again, if you look at Nigeria, one of our biggest costs is infrastructure cost. It costs about $16,000 for this prototype house, while in South Africa and all of that, it is much lower. So I think we need to now go back to the drawing board and say, if we compare ourselves, we won't compare ourselves to those countries that are higher up here. We compare ourselves to these countries, Cameroon, Rwanda, Zambia. and look at these individual components of the cost and see what they are doing better and how we can emulate them, so that by benchmarking against their cost and reducing our cost accordingly, or finding ways on which to advocate, for the cost that government should assist with, or the regulation or the guidelines and things like that, then we can significantly lower the cost of construction of houses in Nigeria. So as I said, one of the, if I go back to this slide, the biggest challenge again is the cost of building the infrastructure and also imported materials, which the other presenter also touched about. We cannot have this quantity of materials into our building being imported. We have to find a way of sourcing them locally, standardizing them, and industrializing the production so that we reduce the overall cost. I should be able to buy a door in Ibadan and use that same door in Abakaliki or in Kaura Namoda or anywhere, and be produced at mass scale so that you have that cost reduction in them. So I'll stop there on the cost of the building. That's been one of the biggest impediments, because all of these now affect the affordability of the houses. The biggest elephant in the room has been interest rates, but I'm happy to report that we have seen a significant drop in that. So in Nigeria before now, interest rates were in the 20s and they were also volatile. So it was not just a question of being high, but they were also very volatile. And I will show you, I'll just display what we have seen in the last 1 year. So if we look at the 10-year federal government bond, which is the benchmark for mortgages in Nigeria, about a year ago, it was about 15%. But you will see that between then and now, as of yesterday, that rate is now 6.34%, which is something that has not happened in the last decade. So cost of mortgages should, if this is sustained, which is the question now, is how do we sustain this low level of interest rate? Then we will see a lot happening in reduction of cost of mortgages. And if we just go back a few years, just to show the last 10 years, you'll see that this same rate in 2011, 2012 was about 16.5%. In 2017, it rose almost to 18%. But that same thing has come down now. So even though ESB Bello was talking about 22% or some rate for the cost, I think going forward, if we can sustain these, the rates are coming down, and hopefully they will remain so. So we have seen significant drop in rate, or in yield rather. And so we should expect that we'll make a good progress. So it's like this problem is being addressed. How sustainable it is another question, because if we look at the inflation rate, which is on this next slide, it is going up. Although we also expect that because of base effect and a few other things, this might come down. So if we can bring inflation down and bring interest rate down, we believe that a lot of these problems of affordability and mortgages in Nigeria will be solved. If I go back to the other challenge we have, which ESV Bello also talked about, is the high cost of land registration and titling. This has been a major problem. The cost is high and the process is tedious. And time is money. Anything that takes time costs a lot of money. The fact that you're having to wait to get something done on time instead of having a production process that works effectively and efficiently, all add to the cost of the housing. And we at NMRC, we realized this right from our inception, that we have to have something in place that will make this cost cheaper and will make the process seamless and very efficient. And so from inception, we have been working with all the state governments on what we call the model mortgage and foreclosure law. Most of the people just realize the foreclosure aspect, but it's actually a model mortgage and foreclosure law. And what we are advocating for that is, how do you streamline the process of title registration, land administration, and cost? And at the back of it, let us have something that serves as a deterrent or make people more willing to be able to meet the obligation, which is foreclosure. And so What this law does is that it streamlines the process of land registration. It reduces the cost. You know, that's what we're advocating. And then at the back of it, it also has a foreclosure provision that gives comfort to investors to be able to come into an industry or into a state. If a state has a foreclosure law, it gives the investor confidence because it knows that because that foreclosure law is there, the probability of default is reduced. And so the cost to the investor is also lower, or rather the risk is lower, and so the cost is lower. So what he will charge that state or for bringing the same amount of money will be lower than a state that does not have. And we have been advocating this, and I'm happy to report that we have made significant progress in this. Lagos State, Kaduna State, Ogun, Ekiti, Nasarawa have now all these law in place. Osun State and Oyo State and Kwara will have the law in place hopefully before the end of this year. And we're making progress with Edo, we're making progress with Enugu and Cross River. And so a lot of things is happening because states are now realizing that in order for us to be able to attract investment into our state, we need to have a process that is smooth, efficient, cheap, and has a provision to give comfort to the investors. So we're working on that. So that's one of the biggest challenge. If we can get that in place, we'll reduce this burden that we have with investors coming in. Because now what investors look at is they say, why do I want to go and put my money in mortgages when I can do maybe treasury bills or other instruments that when you look at the risk, the return using the risk, I'm still way off. I'm still better off doing that. But by this law, they become more confident and will be willing to come to the state. So that's the biggest impediment. And we're having to go through this route because the Land Use Act is enshrined in the Constitution. If you look at Section 315 of the Constitution, it enshrines the Land Use Act, the National Youth Service Corps Act, the Public Complaints Commission Act, and the National Securities Act. So it is almost impossible to change that. But in order to navigate around that is how we, and have something that is enticing to investors and will reduce the cost of finance. The Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company, working with others, came up with this law, and it's something that is gaining national acceptance. The final thing I want to talk about here is equity down payment, which is another impediment because people want to get mortgage, as I said, because there's no point in you using your own investment to get a house when you have to wait maybe 5, 6, 10 years to build a house. And then all your savings is gone into that when you could have as well taken out a mortgage. But most people cannot access mortgages because of the equity down payment. Because when you want to take a mortgage, it is always best practice for you to have what we call a skin in the game. You should be able to come up with 20% equity down payment. But research globally has shown that equity down payment of 20% takes an average borrower about 7 years to come up with. So this has been a major impediment. So even though people will want to get a mortgage, but they might not be able to come up with this amount because it just takes so long. And so we and the regulators, the central bank and other stakeholders in the industry came up with Nigerian Mortgage Guarantee Company, which is a company that will help those who cannot afford a 20% down payment get access to mortgage finance by giving them some kind of insurance at a relatively cheap premium. We're also working and we have finalized with the PENCOM, with the Pension Commission, such that 25% of the equity that they have, that RSA holders have in the RSAs can be used. It won't go out of the pension fund. You still have it as a pension fund, but in case there's a default, there's a way that this down payment can be linked to that, so that it becomes easier for Nigerians to come up with the right down payment that is needed without actually accessing the funds. But there's a sort of a clawback should something happen and you're unable to come with it. So cash doesn't really exchange hand, but you're able now to use that to get a mortgage. So the Nigerian Mortgage Guarantee Company should be something that will come on stream very soon as an institution. The Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company, which is ourselves, We are going to be the anchor and host institution. We want to own about 25% of that company so as to kickstart it. And then the Shelter Afrique, which is a regional African initiative based in Nairobi, has also pledged to own over 10% of that organization. And we're speaking with other stakeholders to make sure that we bring this on board as quickly as possible. The central bank has released the guidelines for the operation of a mortgage guarantee company. So by the time we have these in place, a lot of Nigerians will be able to scale this hurdle of 20% down payment. And then with the title, model mortgage and foreclosure law being adopted in states and interest rates coming down, I think we are in for a very good position to have mortgages as the way to go when it comes to housing in Nigeria. I'll stop there for now. I have other things, and I think this slide will be made available so that people can see a few other things that we are working on, the systems, the electronic mortgage assets register, and a few other things that we're doing at NMRC. Just in the process, just with the whole purpose of just making it more affordable and available to Nigerians to own their own homes. Mr. Moderator, sir, I will stop here and then we can continue later.
Thank you very much. Our own dear Gundimi, you have actually demonstrated your expertise in this sphere of mortgage and financing. Thank you very much. We are looking forward to your actually getting the Nigerian Equity Guarantee Company to come on stream, because it's going to go a long way to help housing ownership dreams by many Nigerians, especially civil servants. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Now Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
while you've thanked the last presenter, we have in our midst now our own professor, an estate surveyor and valuer, Timothy Nubi.
Thank you so much.
I know that at the end of the day, we will allow people to now send in their questions. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Moderator, Professor, it's nice seeing your face again. Thank God we've all survived COVID-19. And God will keep keeping us. It's a pleasure seeing my brother, first Vice President. It's a pleasure to see my colleague, my senior colleague, Savio Ludari, the Senator Ashafa. If you see around, I've said my very warm good morning. It's quite a long time. I met him last, I saw him last. And my very brother here, Brother Kainde Ogundimu. It's a pleasure listening to you all. And it's a pleasure. I want to appreciate the organizer of this program for inviting me. I appreciate you. And I pray that the contribution of the Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers, which has always been there, we have always been at the forefront of shaping the housing policy in this country. I remember as far back as 1991, the 1991 National Housing Policy, 80% of it were written by Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers. And we are the only institutions in the country that has housing as a faculty. It's one of the prominent faculty of the institutions. We have valuation, we have agency, but housing is a prominent, and we thank God for the leadership of the late Baba Odeleye, who gave great leadership which is around to participate in this year's summit that is around centered around housing. So let me please enable me, the host, enable me to share my paper, please. Enable me to share my paper.
It will be done now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I've listened carefully to all the presentations before me, and they are very enlightening, very informative, but I received them with mixed feelings. I received them with mixed feelings, with so much sorrow and heaviness in my heart that these problems, the thousands of problems that Oga Bello made reference to, supported by the MD of our refinance company, they are the problems that has always been with us. They are the problem that has always been with us. So, and it reminds me of my presentation one time that I said that there are holes, there are holes here and there. Because when we look at the presentation of Mr. Shodimu, Ogudimu, we see that there are solutions coming on board. So that this problem I see there, like we can see solution in the area of interest rates. You can see solutions. So there are hopes, and that encourages us that at the advocacy and the training end of this chain, that well, there is hope that like Pastor Kumuyi said, too small, I can't read. Like Pastor Kumuyi said that though the cutlass we are using to cut our tree is blunted, and the tree itself is very big, he said if we keep cutting, one day the tree will fall. And I think that's actually what is keeping people like me to keep talking, that where the cutlass we are using is very blunt. But if we keep on cutting and cutting, one day the tree will fall down. And one day we will see housing as a solution. Housing is not a problem. One day the government of this country will be able to establish the nexus between housing and national development. Because that's exactly what Cameron said. When there was the crisis in UK, the global crisis in 2007, Cameron said, the Prime Minister of England, he said, we will build UK out of recession. To come out of recession, to build the wealth of every nation is housing. So the earlier governments appreciate the nexus between housing and national development, especially now that the oil is losing its relevance. The economy of the world divides between two things: the residential property market and the capital market. In America, the residential property market is 42%. The capital market is 48%. And through what Mr. Agudimi told us now, through secondary mortgage, through securitization, they've been able to link the residential market to the capital market. So that is the way to go. The wealth of every nation is between the residential market, residential property market, and the capital market. Our ability to use our mortgage, both at primary and secondary, to link the two together is the solution to national economy. And really to tell us the importance of mortgage and the importance of the housing sector, that I'm really thanking God that God put it in the heart of our institution to make it, to bring it to fore again in celebrating our 60th anniversary as a present nation. Now let's look at this housing. Let's look at how we can build our economy post-COVID-19, post-oil disappearance. Now we don't need to, let us creatively build our economy. But we keep on saying it, like I said earlier, and I believe that we will get there. We will get there. Against this background, let me say that a healthy housing sector shows a thriving economy. US boasts of 72% home ownership. UK has 78%. Singapore has 92%. While Nigeria has as low as 10% home ownership rate. Housing indicates the welfare of a population. In UK, the welfare system of developed country is built around housing. So, which means that what we need to do over the years, government have demonstrated its commitment through various housing policies. The establishment of a number of housing agencies, but the existing housing situation in Nigeria seems not to reflect any link between the comprehension of these problems and the feasibility of the solution proposed in this policy. Prominent among these policies and programs since independence, they are in 1964, formulation of Association of Housing Corporation, establishment of 1971, establishment of National Housing Council and Federal Government Housing Board. We see 1972, establishment of National Housing Program, creation of Federal Housing Authority. In 1995, direct provision of 2.6 billion for housing provision in all the states. And we see it up to the year 2000, but in the 90s, we see the establishment of the National Housing Fund, promulgation of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria Act. These are several efforts every year. It got to a stage in this country that a political party, MPN at that time, have to adopt housing as their major party propaganda. In their flag, that party has housing in the middle of their flag, and the Yoruba people call them Egbe Onile. That shows to us the efforts in the past to solve the national housing problem, Up to 2013, the establishment of Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company, where the last speaker now is the CEO. 2017, establishment of Family Homes Fund. And recently, the federal government said they will build 300,000 housing units across the country, and the money to facilitate that project will reside in family homes to do 200 billion naira to reside in family homes. So that is the journey. Those are the efforts that government we have made as a nation. But despite all these efforts, what do we see in our towns and cities? There are 6 slums. Because one, Renner in 1992 said something. I don't want to repeat what former speakers have said, but let's just put this thing so that we know where to go. We see efforts since 1960, that we got our independence. 60 years after, to still have these pictures in our cities, especially Lagos, Karu, then it is disheartening. What we see have across Nigeria today, I see these pictures. And where we are showing that we are seeing today, they were not in any corner. These are the center of Lagos. These are Makoko. Makoko, when you travel on the 10 Million Bridge, you will see Makoko slum telling us, giving us our report sheets of how far we have gone in this country. And we have this slum because our approach of construction has not changed. According to Professor Omiri in 1992, he said an average Nigerian, they built his house for nothing less than 15 to 22 years. And this is the model of construction that is very popular in the country. That's very popular in the country, whereby a foundation is laid and 2 rooms will be lifted up for people to occupy. And they will continue to build this for about 15 to 22 years. That's the procurement or housing construction method of nothing less than 80% of houses in this country. 80% of houses in this country, that is the way the houses were being constructed. When you use this procurement construction method, all you see is the development of slums, whereby 80% of the cities remain construction sites forever. But this is possible because according to Renan 2002, a city reflects the housing finance system that is obtainable. Where there is a well-structured housing finance system, estates like that of Mr. Bello, Savio Bello, is what we see. Estates like VGC, estates like Guanipa. But where there is no well-structured housing finance system, people will be helping themselves to build incrementally. And you will see slums and sprawl in such nation. You will see slum. So the only solution to slum development, that the slides that we've seen above, is to create a structure, a housing finance system. I've said it in several forums, that it's only in this country that a young graduate after 2 years will send money to his parents to buy land. They will lay the foundation and they will be building it. An average Nigerian will start by buying land, and that's why we kept on hearing from the report of, from the presentation we have had today, that land is a major problem. And unless we solve the problem of land, we are not getting anywhere. That is only in Africa. Land is not a problem in any part of developed economy where they've been able to achieve almost 100% home ownership. For my own children will not buy land. They will, all over the world, what people say is that I want to buy a house. But it's only in Nigeria people say I want to build a house. And unless we change that narrative to I want to buy a house, my children in Europe, 2 years after graduation, they took a mortgage and they bought their house. So Nigeria is not an exception. The way to go forward is to see how do we build houses in the manner that will be industrialized, like Savio Bello said. How do we build houses in large number? Very simple economic tells us that there is economic of scale. When we produce more, the cost that Mr. Ogudimu said will crash. But as long as we are building 10 houses, 50 houses, an average developer in Nigeria today, the best they do in a year is 100 houses. FHA for 30 years existence were only able to produce 30,000 houses, an average of 1,000 houses per annum. We were told today that between 2001 and today, that FHA facilitated 4,000 housing units. That's an average of 200 units per annum. And FHA is a major player in the housing production industry in this country. So the way forward is we must change the story by building, by making house, by commoditizing housing and building in large number in such a manner that the cost can come down. If interest rate is already down, as presented by Oga Shodimu, then we can see the typical problem we kept on identifying in literature. This problem that you see me projecting, this is an extract from the presentation to President Yar'Adua in 2007. So the problem still remains with us. Problem of existing housing delivery, land, housing stock, finance. This was what we presented to President Yar'Adua in 2007 when I was in the Board of Federal Housing Authority. And we had the target of producing 2 million housing units for this nation within 4 years. And we put machinery in place to do it. Except we begin to think of millions to solve our deficit of 17 million, there is no way we can go for. But one thing that is not popular when we identify problems of housing in Nigeria is the problem of corruption. The problem of corruption. The corruption, the biggest cause of corruption is undoubtedly the political leadership at the aim of affairs in a country. That was according to Chevron to 1998. In addition, cumbersome and dilatory administrative procedure and practice are another major causes. So corruption is a major problem in the country that we have to look at. But this does not usually come up when we make presentation, when we make our presentation. There's a growing empirical literature based on comparative country studies, emphasizing that corruption lowers investment, capital productivity, capital inflow, and many other macroeconomic data. Because one, why do you need to really, nobody will invest in our economy if we don't resolve the issue. So in the recent time, what do we begin to look at? Since we have this bogus 17 million housing units to resolve, and in the last few years, there have been several efforts on part of the government to make sure that these figures were reduced and we were not really getting there. Then in the recent time, I started looking at how do we optimize the opportunities? How do we scale up? That's why I said, despite the failure of past government housing policies and programs, most Nigerians in the so-called informal sector still manage to put roof over their heads. It is time to shift focus from the imported World Bank-driven models to ensure end users-driven approaches that have sustained our people and cities for decades. We begin to look at which of the efforts in the past has really helped us so that the whole system is being sustained and not collapsed. And we started looking at cooperative housing, faith-based housing development, housing improvement, and so on and so forth. And when we look at faith-based housing, we see when we look at cooperative, we find out that cooperative housing has done a lot of cooperative societies have done a lot of housing projects, more than the so-called government efforts. So we are saying that let us look at the cooperative and see, since most Nigerians belong to one cooperative or the other, and Sylvia Bello said earlier on in his presentation that we must begin to look at the end users. We don't need to, that if we want to have a successful housing project, we must mobilize the end users. One of the methods of mobilizing the end users is the cooperative. So the cooperative have done so much. The slide you see here, the cooperative Villa Badore, is a model of a successful cooperative project in this country. Fantastic estate with several units there. And we also found out that there is a cooperative in most institutions. The cooperative you are seeing the slide now is the unique cooperative villa at Mowe, is University of Lagos, one of the cooperatives, University of Lagos. But you can see that they have problems. They have land, fence, but out of about 600 or 1,000 plus there, less than 100 were developed in the last 10 years. What is the problem? The problem of finance. So those are the kind of intervention we are now advocating, that those that were producing this thing in large number that have formed themselves into cooperative, let government see the way they can intervene and support through Federal Mortgage Bank. How can this be? And then luckily for us, Federal Government Bank said they have opened a window for cooperative. All we need to do is that let us enlighten and tell the cooperative the opportunity. I want to quickly say that the faith-based organization, the churches and the mosque, they were also building houses in large number. The Redemption Camp in Lagos is a town today with nothing less than 10,000 housing units in it. And we are hearing government saying that FHA built, facilitated 4,000. But I want to say these faith-based organizations have been able to deliver about 10,000 houses. So let us begin to see as government, these are the housing projects within the camp, Redemption Camp, RCCG city. These are the estates within the stack, the multi-story building at Parkland Estate within Redemption Camp. These are efforts of churches and mosques. These are quality estates that you see in almost in a place that has virtually turned to city in the recent time. So we are saying that those efforts must be acknowledged and we study them and see the way we can. Another thing that we've seen effort in the recent time is regeneration. Our slum, our so-called slums that are increased between 1992 to date, it has increased from 42 to 300 plus in Lagos. We can't leave them as slum. They are already living on a land. So to regenerate slum does not involve acquisition of land, but effective utilization of land. So this is a regeneration project at Ijora Badia. I'm involved in that project. It's supposed to be, it's a planned regeneration program of 1,008 units. But the picture you are seeing is a picture of 240 units. So of 21 blocks of 1,008. So regeneration is what we must also pay attention to. Then I want to encourage us that another critical area in solving our national housing problem is housing education. There is a gap in knowledge in housing. Housing has moved from being brick and mortar to financial matter. Housing all over the world is seen today as a commodity. They produce houses as they produce shoes and clothes, and people just go there and buy them off the shelf until we begin to train our people to change their orientation from I want to build to I want to buy. Then we have to realize this is a crucial but temporary but terribly neglected issue in housing delivery in Nigeria. While Nigerians know so much about other things like sports, their knowledge on housing is very poor. Hardly can a Nigerian graduate name 5 types of houses and 4 sources of housing finance. Hardly can they. If you get to England, you get to America today, when you are in secondary school, you know that the way to get a house is mortgage because your parents have already been discussed with you. The skill involved in housing production are not readily available in a nation with 20 million unemployment. So this led to the establishment of Center for Housing Studies, University of Lagos. We are running a master's program. We are running short course program in the program. And we appreciate the Faculty of Housing of the institution. So there is need for education at different level in housing. All over the world, including South Africa today, people have BSc in housing. If housing is next to food, and people have PhD in agriculture, BSc agriculture, we do agree, even in school SAT, then we must pay attention to housing education right from secondary school. And we at the university, we are working on that through the center that God enabled us to start about 7 years ago. In conclusion, I want to say that nation building requires creative thinking and leadership that walk the talk. In the picture you've seen below, in the picture you are seeing now, if you can identify those that were standing there, Clinton, President Clinton, when he was the president, Al Gore, then Carter, President Carter, former president then. These are the people building for the masses, for the poor, social housing. They do it every year in America. And the picture by the right is a picture of Jimmy Carter, President Carter. At the age of 86, he still goes around the world to build for those who could not afford to buy through mortgage. So the housing problem in Nigeria is like most of our scape, that these are women. We see there is so much confusion in our cities today, on the road, in the education sector, and these are animals. These are women and these are animals. And this is a bird building its own house. If Nigerians cannot go to the moon, if we cannot launch satellite in the moon, we should be able to sit down and resolve our housing problem. It is not acceptable that Nigerians were still living in slum 60 years after independence, that majority of Nigerians were still living in this slummy environment. And I want to believe that that is the spirit of why the institution is saying this symposium title is Affordable Housing, which way forward. So I want to appreciate the opportunity given to me to share my thoughts as we continue with the struggle to make sure that all Nigerians were properly accommodated. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you, Professor. Our own dear Professor Timothy Nubi. We know you are a motivator speaker, a motivator in speaking, and also you have serious passion, dear passion to solving Nigerian housing problems. Thank you very much. Professor Nubi is the current Dean, Faculty of Environmental Sciences, UNILAG, and also the Director of Housing at Housing Center at UNILAG. Thank you very much. He had told us that the direction is buying housing as against going to build our own housings. Our housing developers are venturing into housing manufacturing as a commodity good, so that people who need housing accommodation can buy. That is the way forward for our country. And also we need to also have housing education. Thank you very much, own dear Professor. Well, thank you. We will get back if there are people who have questions to ask. But as we progress, let us also see if there are other panelists who have keyed in.
Yes, thank you, Professor. For today, those are our panelists present.
Okay.
And we'll have another one tomorrow, though some of those tomorrow's panelists are here with us. But for today, those are our panelists. So
I
we
don't
should
know.
entertain some few questions.
Yes.
While we continue with the program.
Okay. Please, those who have questions can raise so that our panelists may respond to them.
They can send it through the chat so that you moderate the questions.
Okay. If any person sends, I will read that out.
Before the questions from other members, I want to ask Professor Nubi to explain to us what happened during the year he was a member of the board of FHA, that they wrote a proposal for 2 million houses for 4 years. So what now happened? Because we also have the report of the FHA chairman that since 2001, we've been able to produce 4,000. So, and I'm sure he was a board member in between 2001 and now. So what now happened to their 2 million proposal? What was the issues?
Sincerely speaking, those are it's a very emotional question because we found out that it's a process that every nation will go through. We made our presentation. President Obasanjo appointed us into the board of FHA. It was a technical board, 7 professionals, architects led by General Reeves, who has a PhD in architecture. And the instruction given to us was actually go and give this country a roadmap to social housing. That was the assignment given to us. But Professor Obasanjo believed that FHA has a leading role to play as a national organization that is charged with the responsibility. And there was a place I was asking somebody yesterday that in most of the discussions we have in the recent time around housing, that I didn't really see the FHA leadership present there. So it gladdens my heart to really hear from Senator Ashafa today. And I want to say that this was a presentation we made to the National Executive Council under President Obasanjo, and they gave us a standing ovation because he said we designed a system for this nation. All our recommendations are what we are now seeing in terms of coming on board of Refinance Corporation that NMRC is sitting on today's result today. Those are part of our recommendation to Obasanjo's presentation. But he is there. I want to, since Senator Ashava is in the meeting today, I want to encourage him to graciously revisit the presentation because it's a big investment. We were backed up, our board was backed up by KPMG, and the nation spent millions, about 300 million, to pay KPMG for our report. And it's a very clear. We designed a roadmap for affordable housing for this country. So whoever is in the leadership of FHA today and the minister in particular should go ahead and revisit. You see, the problem we face is when President Yar'Adua took over. You see, the problem of lack of continuity in government, that's actually what killed that project. Lack of continuity in government. So it was the government of Obasanjo towards its end. But the document is there for the subsequent leadership to really look at in the interest of this country. Because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. It took us almost 1 year to get that roadmap out. So that in the interest of this nation, let's just revisit it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I can see a question on the chat.
By Amasio.
No, the one by the first question is Oluseyi Clement of Parinde. He said, please, how best can government help those that cannot afford the housing units who don't have access to financial institution for mortgage? I think this question will be best answered by the MD of the finance company.
Yes.
Thank you. I saw that question and that it's kind of it needs further clarification because it says that the person cannot. Let me read the question. The person.
How can government help those that cannot?
I know. I'm reading the question. It says the person cannot afford housing unit and don't have access to financial institution or mortgages. So, which kind of a person is this? You know, when we're talking about housing, we always mix up so many things. So there is affordable housing for those who have some means, and so we want to make sure that the houses become affordable for those. And there is social housing, which is for those who, for some reason, are challenged. You know, so I don't know where to situate this person in that context. Is this somebody that does not have income at all, or somebody that has a very limited income? And so that would be social housing. That is something that taxpayers' salaries are deducted for government to take into consideration. But if it is somebody that has income, but the income is not sufficient to be able maybe to buy the house outrightly or to be able to take mortgage, the FHF, the Family Home Funds, has a product which is called the Help to Own product. And that product will blend some interest forbearance with commercial rate. So let me give a typical example. Let's say the house is 100 naira. The Family Home Funds will come up with 40%, which is 40 naira for that house, and give it as a loan with 5-year moratorium. So you are not paying interest for the first 5 years. You are not paying principal for the first 5 years on that loan, so that it becomes a little affordable for the 40%. And then the 50% you get from a bank, which NMRC will refinance. You know, so by the time you look at the blend of the 50% at commercial rate and the FHF's 40% with deferred interest and deferred principal the first 5 years, it becomes affordable. So there's a product for that, you know, that can help that. But for us to really be able to answer this question, we need to know, is it that this person doesn't have any income at all, or it has some income that is not enough? So if you don't have income at all, that is social housing. The government agencies and all that will take care of that. But if it's that you have some income but is not enough, I think such a person can look up to the Family Home Funds Help to Own scheme for assistance on 40% of that.
Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Thank you very much, the CEO, Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company. That is a very good explanation of that, the product and the way out forward. But the issue is, I think what that person has in mind is people who don't have money at all to buy houses, to acquire houses. Do we have a social housing scheme that is working in the country?
We really don't have. Yeah. Okay.
So it's a problem. And that's why the proliferation of the slum Professor Nubi talked about, because people who cannot alternative arrangement to where they can shelter themselves. That's a problem. So there is also very good need to talk about social housing provision for people who cannot afford good housing for themselves, to have shelter, because it's very, very important. Thank you.
Then my moderator, the second vice president, have a question.
Okay.
Second vice president, please.
Let him come on board.
Before he comes in, maybe we'll have to look at the question of Henry Omosigo. He said, my question, please, can any of the panelists advise on data of the current housing stock in Nigeria? That in his view, we need to have data in terms of how our population and demographics. He went further to say that let us do a study of the Nigerians floating slum, Makoko, otherwise known as Venice of Africa. I'm sure Professor Nubi will be able to tackle that.
Yeah, let me quickly respond by saying that well, the person observed rightly, and I want to inform us that NMRC is actually helping to support the effort towards data gathering in this country. It's a major issue. If only this nation can really appreciate a lot of damage that we are doing to ourselves, we'll be able to appreciate the position of data. Because as I'm talking to you now, I want to tell you authoritatively that in Victoria Island, at Ikoyi, they're recording almost 50% void, vacancy rate. I want to tell you authoritatively that most new estates that came up along Lekki corridor, they were experiencing almost 50% void, 50 to 60% void, no occupation. The same thing with so many districts in Abuja. So we are talking about a nation where people don't have houses to live, and their houses have no people to stay in them. All this is because there is no data. Investors are going blindly to areas where there is saturation because there is no data to guide them. There is no data to tell them that there is what they need in Lekki now are just studio apartments or single family apartments. So people kept on building duplex that nobody is renting. In Victoria Island, in Ikoyi, in Maitama, so many parts of Abuja today, they were vacant houses that were not occupied at all. It's because there is no data to guide the investor that this is the type of property that is needed in the country. So the issue of data is there. Government is doing its best. Like I said, MRC is supporting, but we need to really work additionally on this thing. Then on Makoko, I want to say that in the next 1 month, the Center of Housing Studies, we are working with Makoko community and the property developer to get the data, to enumerate Makoko community. So I also know that we are also working with Lagos State government to do enumeration of not only Makoko, but several slum communities within Lagos. So we are working with Lasura. So that's what the effort of the center. The center is not only education. We are also working on researches, data gathering, and capacity development.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The second vice president, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, the first vice. And I want to use this opportunity to appreciate the panelists for an extremely good job. The issue of housing will continue to engage our attention as professionals. But what I want to comment on is the fact that we have identified the problems. And I was intrigued by Professor Nubi's analysis and statistical exposition regarding home ownership in developed countries. And then we compared it with Nigeria. We're talking of 78% in the United Kingdom, 70-something% in the US, and 92% in Singapore. But what I did not actually see is the structure of that statistics in terms of outright ownership, social housing, social landlord participation, and so on and so forth. I think the bane of our housing problem in this country is the fact that we have not gotten the policy right. All exposition, research, and proposition to date has actually been focusing on governments getting involved in direct construction, whether through agencies like FHA or whatever. And there is nowhere in all those countries that Professor Nubi mentioned, there is nowhere that government actually undertook direct construction as a platform for the success they have actually witnessed. What we see, whether in the United States or the United Kingdom, is a structured subsidy system to actually encourage private participation, whether as developers or whether as social landlords, to creating social housing and affordable housing. And that is actually the foundation and even what they have been building on. And the fact is also that the 78% that Professor Nubi mentioned in the United Kingdom, they are actually not those who own their own homes. We have those who are in private rented, because housing is not just about you owning, it's about you having a roof over your head with some level of comfort, And in this country, we have seen that, the landlord and tenant, the legal framework for investment in housing is atrocious. It is actually skewed against investment. There is no clear cut. When you go into stocks, for instance, you buy shares, you can exit anytime. And then when your dividends are due, you are paid. There is no delay. But in this country, when you go into housing development, you have tenants. The tenant may owe you rent. You go to court. It becomes a lengthy battle to actually get the tenant out. And in most cases, you lose your rent. So it is actually a disincentive. So I think what we need to focus on, and what I will expect maybe from other panelists, is actually how to structure our housing system to actually take us to the level we want. Not just developers. I'm a developer. There are so many developers. My brother, ESV Daribelo, is a developer. He will not go and develop and sell below his cost price. It's not possible. So government needs to come and then through a structured subsidy, subsidize what he is actually providing so that he can make some profit and still deliver housing, because everybody needs to benefit from government, because that is the purpose of government, to cater for the citizenry. So I want to say that we need to focus more on actually the structure and how to deliver affordable housing, social housing platform in this country. And that is the way that I think we can move. That is the way that developed countries that we have had their statistics, that is the way they have actually, tread. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my second vice president. That was a very powerful comment. We also have some questions on the chat. There's a question from Nahi Adeyemi to Professor Nubi. He says, how will the FHF go about the 200 billion naira to produce 300,000 social housing units, since FHF already had their sites?
Okay, can I come in?
Yes.
Okay, FHA,
FHF, he said.
FHA, yes, the Family Homes Fund. Family homes, like you said, they are not developers. They are funders. Family homes are funders. What they do is to fund developers. What they do is to fund developers. Mr. Gudimu just mentioned, that they offer social intervention fund. So presently, if you go to their website, you will see that they funded about eight state governments. I'm very sure that early in the year, Delta State government commission, they opened the estate in Delta that they built through Family Homes Fund, about 1,000 units or 1,600 units estate. In Kano, about 5,000 units. So when state government wants to build affordable housing, they fund such housing. When developer wants to build affordable housing and they go through their template, they fund such housing. So these are still the low interest fund that is available in the country today, that developers don't need to go to commercial bank and take loan at almost 26%. So, but family homes by themselves, they don't fund, they don't build, they don't have sites. It's developers, both private developers and government developers, like FHA, like state government, that are working, can now work with developers as PPP. They package it and they submit their projects to family homes to fund. That's actually, so federal government construction, federal government 300 million units that they want to fund. The money is now with family homes for developers that want to participate in that project to approach family homes and participate in that project. That's the way it works.
Thank you. I believe the person that asked that question must have been very well satisfied with your answer, because you dealt with that very well. Thank you very much, Professor Nubi. First Vice, do we still have more questions with you?
Yes, Senator Ashafa said he would like to respond to Professor's question. So we don't know if he's still with us.
Prof, long time. How have you been?
I'm good, sir. How are you, sir? It's nice seeing you, sir.
Nice to see you too. Now,
it's a pleasure, sir.
I really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank
And
you so much, sir.
you know, that it shows how lucky we are that somebody of your caliber has really been on the board of this great agency in the past. And to say that, yes, I need to make some clarifications.
Okay, sir.
Is in relation to the 4,000. Remember,
Okay,
my area of concentration on this platform is PPP.
Okay.
Yes, so it's the number of units that have been completed through PPP. There are those who are ongoing, but to date, that are completed, they are about 4,000. It is not a number to a large extent, but it is just to let the world know that we engage in it and we are delivering through that channel.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, I think that is the major clarification I want to make. Thank you.
Okay, sir. It's noted, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for your clarification, sir. I also learned that Professor Estate Surveyor and Valuer, Professor B.T. Aluko, wants to ask a question or make some comment.
Okay.
Professor Aluko, please.
Maybe. Okay, is he there?
If he's not there, I also know that there's a comment, a question from Oladoshu Olajide. He said that the product of the CEO of the finance company is so cumbersome and may not work for our environment, coupled with the fact of going to bank that is likely to charge commercial and non-mortgage rates. Said this will just be parabolation, but when people pay rent to own it, becomes more convenient for those that are essential and don't have money to pay outright. This question.
Let me respond to that, please. So the product I explained was the help to own, which is one of the products that FHF has. FHF has many products. They also have rent to own. So for the gentleman that is asking the question, what they want is the help to the rent to own. So there's a product that satisfies his own requirement. So we just talk about one product. You don't design one product and you think it will work for everybody. The other product, which is the help to own, also works if you understand how it works. So it is not a complicated process. It is a process that is designed to lower the interest rate to single digit. So it works. So, but again, what he said a rent program will work. They also have that product. So the product that is advocating for, they have a product for that. And they have a product that I've described. In fact, they have several products. So we're just talking about one or two of them, and that's why I asked at the beginning of that question, it depends on the circumstance or the financial situation of that person, and then we can then direct them to the appropriate product. But there are several products. The rent to own is one of them, which is what he's saying that it's easier. That is fine. There's also rent to own. There is construction finance. There are so many things that they have there, which Professor said, in his remarks. So it's not just one product. It might appear complicated because you haven't seen how it works, but if you sit down with them, you see that it works very well. But they also have a product for you, which you are suggesting, which is the rent to own.
Thank you. Professor Aluko, you are back, sir. Professor Aluko, please.
No, it appears.
He's here.
I'm with you.
Oh, go ahead.
First, I want to thank the institution for organizing this symposium. Second, I want to also appreciate the array of experts that you have called upon to today. But I might have, which the second vice president identified, is that we are looking at housing as if although Senator said there are products, as if it's just, we need to define the structure, the concept that we are looking at. When the first person asks a question about company, because if you go to our majority of the urban dwellers, the city dwellers, are poor people. We do not deceive ourselves. Not everybody can own a house. What we have been addressing is so much. The renters are usually, and that was what the government realized in 1991 policy. Because 1991 has always been public housing delivery. Government then realized that government cannot deliver our houses, private sectors, because in a city, private homeowners are usually the largest in terms of number. But now to say that it is homeownership, we can.
Prof, your audio is not.
Yes.
Because if renters, if people are in the city center and pay to afford the affordable rent, then you will see that people will have agitation for popular cry in terms of problems arising from housing. That is number one. So we define the housing. You see rural housing, you see urban housing that we are talking about, because the experts are not talking about urban housing. They are talking about the ownership, even the renters, the poor people. They are the majority in our urban areas. Secondly, we must put less emphasis on government. Governments will always be an enabler. They provide an enabling environment. Then the issue should be more of private, which they have emphasized here. In terms of housing, government has something on National Housing Fund. To advise the Federal Mortgage Bank, housing mortgage refinancing company, there should be a synergy on how they will be able to implement housing. Some of us now on IPPS, some of us start now pay to the National Housing Fund. Is not practical. We are not what they are doing. And you are talking about housing. Student housing too. Don't focus on, because housing have different types. Professor and it's everywhere. Some of us are able to even plan because of microfinancing, of the issue of cooperative societies. So if you really want to help country, don't talk so much at the structure of the housing that we're talking about. So student housing, so that tertiary institutions are also assessed. Staff that stop to a decent house. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Professor Bichaluko. Thank you for your contribution, but the network wasn't so favorable for us to hear you very well, but we believe some of us heard you well. Thank you for your contribution. The first vice.
Yes, thank you, Prof.
Do we still have more questions? Otherwise,
I can't see any more questions for now. I think we have spent some quality time. So while you round up, then I'll give the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much. Yes. Please, my panelists, I want to thank all of you for being there for us. We have very warmly gained from your experiences and the presentation this morning. We assure you that your contributions will harness and put up some blueprints from it that will help to take our national housing problem to the next solution to the next level. Thank you very much for your wonderful time and the contribution to the success of today's symposium.
Thank you,
First Vice.
Prof. On behalf of our president, the management, and the entire council of the Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers, want to appreciate our panelists, most especially our distinguished Senator Gbenga Ashafa, who out of his very, very busy schedules was able to make it today. I remembered in our last visit, there was a visitation to your office. It was a wonderful one. Senator, we want to thank you so much. We also want to thank the MD of the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company, Mr. Kehinde Ogundimu. We appreciate you so well, sir. By the grace of God, the relationship we have established with you and your organization will continue to flourish. And at the end, we are very sure to add value to that organization. We also want to thank our very own estate surveyor and valuer, Oludare Bello. He's also an astute lawyer of so many years. And again, is the chairman of our legal committee of the Nigerian Institute of Estate Surveyors and Valuers. I usually call him my Oga. My Oga, I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you on behalf of the institution. We thank you.
Thank you.
Then we want to also appreciate our erudite professor and expert in housing, Professor Timothy Nubi. In fact, I'm very sure if we've given you 10 hours, we will not leave here today because you have so much in your arsenal. My prof, I appreciate you, and we also want to appreciate all others who contributed to this today's session, including the panelists for tomorrow. They've been patiently listening to what happens today. So once again, on behalf of the on behalf of our president, the Nigerian Institute of Estate Surveyors and Valuers, president of NISV, Estate Surveyor and Valuer, Chief Emmanuel Okaswike, we want to thank you all. And my second vice president, for your comment, which was very powerful. Thank you. So on that note, the moderator want to also thank you. So tomorrow we will be talking on land administration in Nigeria. Critical look at the land administration in Nigeria till date. And we have as panelists for tomorrow, after the president's welcome address, we have one of our own, because he's the honorary fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Estate Surveyors and Valuers, the PAMSEC Land Bureau, Lagos State, Bode Agoro. We also have the PAMSEC of River State, who will be one of the panelists tomorrow. We also have our erudite professor, Estate Surveyor and Valuer, Professor M.M. Umiri, who will be looking at the critical look at the Nigeria's land policy since 1960. We have our own Professor, Estate Survey and Valuer Professor M.B. Nuhu, who will be looking at the Land Use Act, a need for amendment. And we also have one of our own, Estate Survey and Valuer Mrs. Dereka Great. She is currently the Federal Land Director, and she'll be looking at the challenges of land registration in Nigeria. And the moderator for tomorrow is our own, again, Estate Survey and Valuer Professor Olurotimi Kemiki, who will be, then we also have, sorry, I missed out, Estate Survey and Valuer Professor B.T. Aluko, who will be looking at the Land Use Act 1978. Is it a failure or success? Noble colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure from these subtopics or sub-themes, tomorrow is loaded. And we will, I'm sure the MD Mortgage Finance Company, Mr. Kende, will join to listen because some of his problems will be resolved tomorrow, issue of land issues. So I also know that Mr. Senator Gbenga Shafa will find time to join us. So on that note, once again, on behalf of the President of our great institution, thank you all and God bless you all. Thank you. Goodbye.